Good morning, lovelies. How's everyone doing today? So, I was, going to talk about the pedos and the pedo hunters. And I really feel that the pedo hunters are mostly, if not entirely, controlled by the pedos who eat children. And I differentiate these things. Um, they remind me a lot like the whisperers in The Walking Dead, where they would dress up like a zombie and wear the skin, of the skins they peeled off of zombies and everything. They'll blend into the crowd of zombies or the horde of zombies, and they'll steer them in whatever direction. And that's actually what the fucking pedos seem to be doing to, like, let's hunt them pedo, the pedo hunters. And that's why you find so many pedos amongst the pedo hunters. Um, and it gets people to just focus, endlessly on their sexual abuse. Like, oh my God, why don't you tell me about that? Why don't you go to a group and talk about it, and then you could live your sexual abuse your whole life. And they did that to Virginia Giuffre. It looked like. I mean, she took a deal, right? And that's why I haven't taken a deal, so I could talk about these things. But she took a deal, and she wasn't supposed to talk about certain things, at least. And she did, and she's like, yes, there's much worse stuff than the pedophilia going on. But anyway, back to my sexual abuse and the pedophilia that happened to me. And it's like, what? Aren't you supposed to be using your voice for those that don't have a voice? Or am I just crazy? Am I just supposed to, like, go to group and just, like, talk about my sexual abuse, forever? Be like, look, yeah, people doing weird, fucked up shit to me, with their kids, and I didn't even realize it until my 40s. And I'm just supposed to endlessly cry about that shit and be like, yeah, 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 there's far worse stuff, but here, hang on a second, let me cry about my shit and some more. And it's all distorted and it's all twisted. And I really feel that if you guys just, at this point, I'm just like, fuck it. Just let families, raise their families as they see fit. This doesn't mean roofing someone is okay or raping someone is okay. There's all sorts of things that is still wrong. But if you can convince someone to do a sexual act for you, then there's very little even the gods could do about that. So when two creatures decide to do something together, and that's just on them. And so that's kind of like where I land, because I'm like, man, it looks like you guys will have a lot less problems. And often when I think about this stuff, I think about the almost adults doing weird things with young adults. When it gets too old, it gets too greedy. Like, that's like, people are like, no, it's just wrong, and I'm like, but why is it wrong? Well, it's just wrong. Well, like, it's greedy. It's really greedy. Is the thing. And speaking of greed, you seem to have a huge problem on your fucking planet with that fucking extreme greed. So yeah, I think about the Rainbow Room in the Rainbow Room scene, the two scenes that was in Eyes Wide Shut, the lighter stuff, and people be like, oh my God, there was an almost adult willingly playing with some other adults. That's some of the lightest shit ever. But, like, people are conditioned and trained to be like, no, this is the worst. This is the worst. Don't think about us peeling, children's faces off and torturing them and killing them and murdering them and cooking them alive and eating them and shit. Don't think about any of that. Just be the victim forever. Like, yeah, it shocked me. I watched some of Virginia Giuffre's stuff. I haven't watched all of it, but she was like talking at a press conference or something, and she's like, yeah, and there's worse stuff than pedophilia. Anyway, back to my fucking abuse. And it's like, Are you sure you're not being like led around by the whisperers and the fucking Walking Dead? Are you sure? There's a lot of fucking pedos in there. That they need to chant, oh my god, this is so terrible, let's get them. And they're a pedo themselves, right? So then they're like manufacturing the blackmail. They got it. If people were like, what the hell ever, people consent to weird shit and that's their business. If people just went like that, they totally like lose all that blackmail and all that power, right? And that's why they install their pedos in the pedo hunter thing, because they got to maintain that blackmail. And it's like, look, it's something that I'm not looking to participate in. I mean, thank you, like, or something, I appreciate, or something, people fucking roofie raping me with their children into my adulthood, probably taking photos, but I don't care. I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care what people think. Totally Michael Jackson me, but, I don't have a big fortune like Michael Jackson does. And yes, they would still do this to people that don't have money. Although there's a few less assholes that I have to worry about, with people getting their children to feel themselves up around me. And look, you just got to say something about Christopher so we could get $5 million, okay? Just where did they touch you? Or where did he touch you? It's like, yeah, I don't touch children. Sorry, I'm not interested in that. I already have a hard enough time with, trying to make things work with a normal female my age, because people roofie possessed me and cast bad magic on me to make stuff like that not work. And then it turned into a psychological operation where people are like, well, maybe he's gay, and just all sorts of shit and just all sorts of bullshit. And it's like, wow, just, the whisperers were in my life too, I guess, steering the mob this way, steering the mob that way. So there's a very small, like, when I say, families could, raise their kids as they see fit. This doesn't mean you should be sacrificing them or like selling them into prostitution. But on the other hand, there are, all sorts of weird relationships, like whether it's a junior higher and a high schooler, or a high schooler and a college person, or on the extreme end, it's a junior higher and a college person together. That's all petty ass shit. That's all petty ass shit. It gets to the point where, like, you guys are such pussies that I saw that expensive tastes dude on the TikTok with the fucking crosses on his glasses, and he's talking about fucking, Stephen King's It and shit. And he's like, oh my god, at the end of Stephen King's It, the kids had sex with themselves. And it's, yeah, what was it supposed to be, like 50-year-old Tom Hanks in there? What the fuck, you fucking... And I just saw like a Mr. Ballin fucking video where there was, some kids playing with the Ouija board, and they thought they had summoned a spirit, which can happen indeed, yes. But in this particular case, it was an actual human being that was living inside the walls of this house and everything. And the father was just like, this is in your imagination. They were hearing noises, they were seeing writing, they were doing, just, they're getting gaslit, by mommy and daddy. And sending the kids off to fucking counseling and shit. Just like, you're trained to abuse your kid and not believe them. And not believe them when they tell you something. And a lot of you fucking parents do that shit. So yeah, dealing with the Stephen King situation, and this definitely happens in real life, but it's a fictional book. But the parents are all gaslighting the kids that this is fake. They're all stressed out and decided to do something amongst themselves. All right, and I can't really blame them for that, and I'm not going to be a pussy like, oh my god, Could you believe the children had sex with the children? And it's like, oh my God, dude. Like, really? Really? That sounds like the most ideal fucking situation I ever fucking heard of. You know, and it's like the Zionist, does the victim shit a lot, and I see that being used in the fucking hunt pedo bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit in there. And you're not going after any of the stuff that's worse. You're just endlessly. I'm the victim. Oh, my sexual abuse. They want to turn me into a little bitch like that too. And no. I'm just kind of like, yeah. I had to learn everything over the past 3 years, a little bit into my 40s, and I'm kind of over it. And I'm over it. I'm not joining them. I'm like, look, fine. If you want to raise your kid to suck some old Hollywood producer's dick for that $10 million role, that's your business. If you could leave the rest of us alone with all of our other freedoms, too. So, I'll give you that. If you give us all that other stuff, the let your families, raise your families as you see fit, and this, extends to not poisoning them with food and being able to protect your house with like lead paint so the EMFs aren't fucking with you and all sorts of shit. So I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll take that. On top of the one side is so fucking pussy, what the hunt them pedo side is so pussy. I'm like, well, why don't you guys make like a robot that's like a child and everything, and someone could do something sexual to it, and people are like, oh my God, and is it a child? Is it a human child? No? Then shut the fuck up. All right? And they're like, no, that's going to make us really uncomfortable. We should just make full-sized adult Terminator robots instead. They'll be much harder to handle and kill, more humans per robot. Well, it makes us feel more comfortable. If it makes us feel more comfortable, having an adult-sized, robot and everything. And it's like, yeah, I know. So I don't think all the pedos eat children, though. And there's another problem. Hang on a sec. I don't think all the pedos eat children, is the thing. And they can't do anything because, they have their people being installed in the hunt them pedo people to, whisper the zombie group, right? So they can't do anything about the child eating because people would be like, grab their pitchforks and torches if they came out and said, like, look, we do the pedophilia stuff, but we don't do the child eating stuff. But we'd like to talk about the child eating stuff, but they train everybody to just focus on this instead of any of the worst stuff. And that was something that Virginia Giuffre fell in, and I'm very sorry. She didn't deserve to lose her life over all those petty things, even speaking about things after getting a settlement, But she fell into the trap of, I'm the victim, 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 and then she ended up being the victim. Wow. Imagine that. So, like she cast a bad magic spell on herself. And then I seen Ian Carroll talk about, like, the worst stuff for, like, 30 seconds on one of his streams. No, I don't watch all his shit. I saw Virginia Giuffre. You always bring up the worst stuff, just briefly. You're like, yeah, there's much worse stuff, but here, let me focus on, my past sexual abuse and people violating me. And it's like, look, yeah, that's wrong and everything. Sorry that happened to you. That's in the past. If you keep bringing it up, you're just going to manifest that into your reality. And yeah, so I had a friend that married at 15, and I can't really judge it. People are like, she was groomed and everything. Fuck off. You're all groomed. You're all groomed to be really fucking retarded. Okay, most of you. All right, that's just you raise your child some way. All right, like the Amish raise their children to probably work on a farm. Are they being groomed for the farm work? A cop probably raises a child to do some law enforcement. Whether it's a lawyer, maybe a firefighter or a cop, somewhere around there. Maybe they'll be an EMT. They're like, look, I gotta, I want to help people. And oh my God, the cop is grooming their child. You're all fucking getting programmed. At every fucking moment. So this, when it just pertains to sexual things, is no different than everything else. It's like, yeah, you guys turned into super pussies. Where you guys like, it is the most annoying shit that I heard from that expensive taste motherfucker. And he usually has all right takes, but he's like, oh my God, at the end of the book, the children had sex with the children. Shut the fuck up, you super pussy. Wow. And I've kind of had it. I'm very similar to Michael Jackson, but since people have been doing like fucking, fucked up things to me since I was a kid into my adulthood with other people's children, using it as a name for child protection or whatever bullshit. They haven't gotten their children to feel themselves up around me lately in Denver, but it's still hysterical. People still do weird things, and I recognize that. And it's like, wow, people have been like, doing that shit to me since I was a child. Not just the sexual abuse, but just these weird psychological warfare games. And, I've come to the conclusion that you and your children could go fuck off and fuck yourselves. Just, stay the fuck away from me. I don't want any fucking, picnic or hanging out, with your fucking weird children that would, rape me or do something weird sexual around me because you gotta catch them, right? Just like the whisperers and the fucking zombie, hordes. I'm kind of, totally over it at this point. And I'm like, look, it just looks like you guys will have less problems because when you try to manage this stuff, look at your CPS. Look at your CPS. Your CPS just funnels kids into child sex. Oh, you have like nearly 1 million, and it's probably the real numbers are more than 1 million a year in America of missing children. And you guys aren't controlled by the fucking child eating pedos. You guys aren't controlled. You more than 1 million, and you aren't controlled. Just like the whispers in fucking Walking Dead. And you're not controlled like that. Right. And that's why you find so many pedophiles in the Hunt Them pedophile group. And I'm not impressed with all your fucking weird child porn shit that, we busted somebody with child porn. Meanwhile, you're fucking spreading dead child porn across all your social fucking media platforms like it's no fucking big deal. Yeah, it's okay to show children without their fucking limbs and half a fucking skull. Well, we didn't pass a law. Look, the sexual stuff gets really sensitive, okay? Especially after you ejaculate. But anyway, I couldn't help that one. Anyway, yeah, it is. Yeah, but even though the sexual stuff is survivable, so you're going to take your voice. Like I was sexually abused. I had the adrenochrome thing done to me, and the one difference is that I wasn't eaten. And I wasn't murdered for the adrenochrome. So I should use my voice to talk about that stuff instead of being like a little bitch for my sexual abuse happened to me. Oh my god. It gets really annoying, and then you guys aren't really fucking making progress. It looks like most of the child protectors or the pedo hunters or whatever are just they're like, we should kill the pedos, and it's like, you don't even get killed the child killers, right? So why the fuck would I trust you with that shit? You're like, we should just kill the pedos. Oh, so you're just going to like make up a bunch of pedos so you could cause harm to others. And that's another thing, is a lot of people, especially the demons, like to use the fact of child protection to abuse others. They don't really care about the children. They like the appearance of caring about children, but they like most of all to just harm others. They have to have a reason for it, whether it's made up or not. They need something that feels good, something, that they could whisper the zombie horde into, and yeah. So yeah. Jumping back to the dead child porn of all that fucking, if we don't share it, we don't care about genocide bullshit. Yeah, if looking at images makes someone guilty, then you're all, or a lot of you, are guilty of sharing and looking at the dead child porn. And I could only see, one, the children survives, at least survives most of the time, right? So one image, right, the child survives most of the time. The other image, the child is fucking dead. Which one's worse? I mean, did you get groomed and trained by the pedos themselves for their blackmail? Tell me, which one's worse? Which one's worse? What would the gods say is worse? Some of the perverse shit, or some of the unsurvivable shit. But what do people focus on? The less worse stuff, because y'all totally aren't controlled by the actual pedos that eat children. And that's what it looks like from where I'm standing. The child protectors and the hunt them pedo people are almost all controlled or all controlled by the fucking pedos that eat children. And, argue with me, debate me, I guess, you could, more than welcome to comment and whatnot. But anyway, I'm done making my points, and you guys have a lovely fucking day. Hello again. I need to add to this video. So I was going to say, just to be clear, so if you raise your family and you don't want to partake in that, and that stuff happens to you, your child gets sexually used or abused, then a crime occurred. But if you're a family and you just, let's say you're a Zionist and you want to partake in all that stuff, as they often do, then, and everyone's consensual, so, is it okay with the family? Is it okay with the individual? Then no crime occurred. And that's, the cleanest you could really hope for. Freedom is sort of messy at times, and this would be one of those examples about freedom. So yeah, I just think it's just safer for everyone to just let everybody do their thing, because it looks like your child protective services is just funneling children into sex trafficking, and it's really fucking stupid. A lot of the, hunt them pedo people would, target especially young adults that have been tortured for life since they were a child, but because they're over 18, it's okay. And a lot of you will try to, yes man, and get, some inappropriate porn installed on their thing so they can make them look a certain way, and yada, 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 and it's all a fucking mess. And, no one, all the underground tunnels, all these underground tunnels, and y'all wasting a bunch of time, a bunch of your resources and time, and that's the point. That's the point of the pedos joining the pedo hunters, is to waste your time. Like you guys do that little show thing. Oh my God, there was an adult asking, my almost adult, for consent for sex. Like, that's the fucking worst thing going around here, and you waste a lot of fucking time and resources on that. You guys could be building tunnels and accessing these things where fucked up shit happens, and going in there armed and everything, especially in America. But do you? No. You just do this little show with some of the most petty stuff There is, and when I'm like, I'm seeing an adult, yeah, solicit like a minor or something, but I'm like, they're asking for permission. And that right there is the least violating thing I could fucking think of. But it's this big show and Chris Hansen and why don't you sit down here and blah de doo doo doo, you know? And it's designed that way to make you guys feel good like you're fucking doing something, but you're really, not. And you're being misdirected, like the zombie mob you seem to be by the whispers endlessly. And that's why I come to these conclusions. I'm like, look, you guys can't handle this. You guys are all being forced to do harmful, bad things to your children, whether some of you realize it or not. And it's just like, well, why don't you just like let families, be and raise their families as they see fit? If they don't want to partake in that and no one consented to it, then duh, it's a crime. So it pretty much still encompasses most of the stuff. It's just, the almost adults and young adults. I'm like, not an issue. The children having the sex with the children, not an issue. There's these little things that just, need to be plucked away so you could refocus your efforts if you are actually child protectors. Not being totally manipulated by the child-eating pedos. And I don't think all the pedos eat children, so I got to give them credit for that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Gaza would look much better if it was just a bunch of child molesting Catholic priests lording over, Gaza or Palestine. And that's just fact. That's just fact. But when you put the child murderers in charge, guess what it looks like? So I'm just going to have to rate one worse than the other. And I know you're training and for the blackmail and to steer the fucking mob like the Whisperers in Walking Dead. All right, it's supposedly the worst stuff ever, but I'm going to go with fucking child murder being worse than the pedos, if you don't mind. And I'm going to focus on stuff where people don't survive, as opposed to crying endlessly about my child abuse or my child, sexual abuse into my adulthood. So yeah, I'm not gonna be like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever. I mean, it was pretty fucked up, don't get me wrong, and I'm over it. And I'm over it now, and I don't need to talk about it endlessly and just like be an endless victim. All right, I'm kind of over it. I need to talk about it now because the only people that victimize me are, people roofie possess me. People roofie rape me with their children into my adulthood, and then they kind of continue raping me with their children, although non-sexually, in my adulthood. And that's the so-called child protectors that are the ones, abusing me. And it doesn't, it's either the child molesters abusing me or the child protectors abusing me, and then I just go, fuck all you, is kind of my stance, until you get your shit straight. And it really looks like a lot of the child, protectors or pedo hunters are controlled by the child-eating pedos. And I've made my case. And yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that part was super clear. Look, if it's not okay with you and your family, or the participants in your family, then a crime occurred. If it is okay with, the participants in your family, then no crime occurred. And that kind of cleans things up so you could just, refocus, maybe not. Maybe you guys, instead of doing this little show shit, you guys could be digging tunnels and accessing these areas, going in there armed, or, doing some spy stuff, whatever. Instead of your stupid show shit, like, oh my god, someone's asking my child permission. Well, that the asking for permission is some of the nicest stuff around here. All right, so and then you guys make a big show out of it as if you're making a lot of progress. Although 1 million children every year are disappearing in America, and you guys aren't controlled by the fucking child-eating pedos? Really? And CPS fucking just funneling children and you're not controlled? Because it looks like you are from where I'm standing. All right. So anyway, I mean, do what you will with the information. I don't really, give a fuck anymore. I'm going to be a voice for the ones. Look, like the adrenochrome murdered ones. I went through the blood sucking shit. I at least survived. So I can't cry endlessly about that. So how about I talk about the adrenochrome children that have been murdered? If you don't mind. I think there's enough people out there in the child protectors or hunt them pedo bullshit, chanting pedo, 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 pedo. You guys got that shit down. I'm going to focus my attention on the unsurvivable stuff, if you don't mind. The children's voices that have been silenced. Could I have that? I'm going to, I'm not even going to ask permission. I'm going to do that. If you don't mind, or if you do mind. So yeah, I'm just, clearing things up because I always have to add on to these videos, actually, So yeah, and that's the best you could hope for. No, I'm not trying to join them. I'm not going to join them. I really don't want to have any kids after I see what the fuck goes around on Earth here. So, if you don't mind, or if you do, I'm just not going to have children because y'all be really fucked up. And some of you not, but you all get easily misled, like the whisperers in The Walking Dead that direct the zombie mobs and dress up like zombies, and yeah, and they use it for blackmail. But if you're just like, yeah, you know, were people consenting to it? And yeah, I'm sorry. Are there some people that are young that get convinced to do some sexual stuff that later get taught that that was totally bad? I mean, I guess I don't know the circumstances, but I think people like all the Zionists are fucking running around your shit, capturing all your shit, and it's like they're doing better than others. Yeah, they eat children and everything, but it's like, maybe the sexual stuff isn't as traumatic as they intentionally teach. It also reminds me of that South Park episode with the fucking wristbands and the sayings, and at the end of the South Park episode, the one guy was like kind of dancing around everyone and singing, and then he like ran off to another town, and that's exactly how the pedos fucking steer and use the pedo hunters. I made the point earlier in this first part of the video, but I'm going to make it again. And they don't even get, let's kill the child killers. Just that simple, right? An eye for an eye, all this religious shit, right? And you can't even get that right. Let's kill the child killers. It's just, let's get the pedos, and you use it for the blackmail. Let's kill the pedos. And it's like, well, you're just, amplifying the blackmail that they have over everybody, right? Right? Yeah, it sounds good on the surface, but then you think about it and you're not really focused on the child killing. You think the child killers would get the killer treatment. It's very simple, I think. Maybe I can't see something that other people could see. Please let me know. So yeah, I'm over it. And, I think a lot of your shit's stupid. I come up with weird solutions, of course, like a weird sex robot, that's in a tiny form like a child. And it is not a child, though. That's the point. It's not a child. And everyone's like, oh, no, that's going to make us uncomfortable. Why don't we make the, adult-sized Terminators instead? Really? Because when they do that execute order 66 on those fucking, adult-sized robots, they are going to fucking murder your children. Well, at least everyone's comfortable for now. So, just as long as you're comfortable for now, that's all that fucking matters. Oh, yes. One last thing. Right. And when you guys get it wrong, then you become a weapon and a tool of the child eating pedos. When you guys get it wrong, you become a weapon and you become abusers of people. And I've seen a lot of the child protectors getting a bunch of mentally handicapped people, on the offender list. People that were abused for their life as a child, but look, they're over 18 now, so it's okay. So it's okay, they're over 18 now. Just like, they sacrifice your children that are over 18 by getting them to enlist in the military and using a bunch of lies to get your children to slaughter a bunch of innocents and trick them into hell. I know people don't believe in hell, but it's just mainly a reflection of how you live your life. So if you did a bunch of unjust things, whether you were lied about it or not, if you did it, you're going to have to suffer those consequences. So, and yeah, so you become a weapon, and I'm just not, I'm not for that. Like Michael Jackson, like Thomas Massey. They just try pulling some sexual, impropriety on Thomas Massey. They always go to the sexual impropriety stuff. So if you just kind of, like whatever, was everyone consenting? Okay, well let's just like focus, Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz was another, and that's how did you guys handle that? Oh my God, he fucked a 16-year-old. He fucked a 16-year-old. She had a fake ID that said that she was 19, but he fucked a 16-year-old. How do you guys handle that? Well, kind of like everyone consented, and like clearly we could see this the U.S. intel community or some intel community trying to get some blackmail on a U.S. politician, and you guys didn't let that slide. However, the pedos amongst the pedo hunters would have made a big deal out of that, right? Because that's their purpose. Amongst the child protectors or pedo hunters or whatever the fuck. So actually, that would be a good way to weed out some of those pedos amongst the child protectors or pedo hunters, right? Because they would be like, "Oh my God, Matt Gaetz! Oh my God, Matt Gaetz! Oh my God, Matt Gaetz!" Yeah, it was all consensual, actually. And yeah, she had a fake ID, but don't let that be the one thing that fucking gets you to be like, well, she had a fake ID. The U.S. intel or other intel agencies could get fake IDs like that. Legit 100, because they have the printing stuff to do that, so they could just print it up and it'll be all legit looking. So I just, simply just leave it up to the families. And that still means that if you don't want to participate in that, and I think a lot of you don't, that would still be a crime. But it kind of, frees up a lot of the almost adults with the young adults that I really don't give a shit about, or the children having sex with the children, that I don't give a shit about, and all these little things that I really just don't give a shit about. In my friend's example, my old friend's example, it's an extreme case. I think she was 15. She might have turned 16 and got married to someone like twice her age. And that was her fucking business, not mine. I can't judge. Maybe it was some deal with the cult or some, like if Chris fails at this thing, then you gotta marry this person. And I feel, some weird deal shit like that happens at times. Well, people be like, placing bets on actions and things that I do, and which is not my fault, by the way. But I don't have any other information except that I know she didn't stand for shit. Like, if there was some bullshit going on, she didn't allow it to slide. If she was unhappy, she would have gotten a divorce a long time ago. She's still married, and therefore I'm just going to have to be like, well, that was her choice, and she's still married, and I can't really make an issue out of it. So why don't you guys bark somewhere else? Why don't you guys bark your way into tunneling and finding these fucking places. If you have a house, you could start tunneling very easily. There's a woman, I think, in the UK that started digging underneath her house and everything. And you guys could do that a whole bunch secretly, and try to access these tunnels that where worse stuff occurs. Instead of making little shows, oh my God, we found this totally abused person, probably roofie raped by children himself, and now he's asking permission to fuck a child. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Asking permission seems to be the nicest fucking thing around. All right, instead of violently forcing yourself, roofing them, fucking having your parents sell you, like, yeah, I know, like, you go through the list and it's like, that's actually the nicer stuff. But you guys, think it's progress, because it's a big show. And I'd rather have you focus on worse stuff. But there seems to be enough pedo people out there chanting pedo as if they want to summon some more into this world. So I'm going to be a voice for the voiceless, okay? And just, the child eating stuff and, the adrenochrome sacrificing murder shit, experimenting on, torturing to death, if you don't mind. Even if you do, that's just what I'm going to do because, all this, the eyes wide shut shit is everywhere. It seems like half of America are pedos anyway, half of the cops, half of the military, and if you just focus on that, and maybe you should focus on, because it seems like they're trying to set up a civil war over the whole pedo thing because they've been working for generations, like centuries, to turn people into pedos, right? This is why nothing's done about the mass scale molestation at the Catholic Church, because they like to invent pedos, because then when there's more of them, then they could do stuff like a civil war. And I will not have you guys civil warring over any of this pedophilic shit, all right? Especially the survivable stuff. What you guys should be focused on is you should be doing a revolutionary war over the child eating stuff, right? Over the child murder. You guys should be doing revolution over the child murder stuff instead of civil war over the pedophilia stuff, because it just seems like it's half. It just, from my perspective, I could have things wrong. Maybe it's a quarter. It seems like it's half, like straight up. So I'm just, even Tucker Carlson was like, had someone on the other day, and he's like, talking about pizza, and this guy's pizzeria. And this, like, didn't we just go through all this shit in the Epstein files? So when I talk about having pizza, I'm like, look, I just, I get this open nature pizza, it's this cauliflower crust, and it's just only these, like, cheese pizza, because I really don't trust any of the other processed ingredients. Like a legit pizza. I'm not, no code word for anything. But a lot of people are like, it looks like they're using it as code words still, and it's like, okay, fine. Half of you guys seem like pedos, and the child survives. So I'm just going to focus on, I need to narrow this down some more, it seems. I didn't know that the fate of Gaia would have to rest on maybe having to work with pedophiles to get the child killers. And the gods will test you for sure. And that sounds like one hell of a test. I would trust, Palestine should be looked after by the Palestinians. But in this weird occupation colonization thing, I would trust the Catholic child molesting priests to be better stewards of fucking Palestine than I would the child killing Zionists. All right, and that's just that. I'm like, yeah, well, at least the place wouldn't look all destructed, and they wouldn't be starving, and there's famine and disease and genocide. They'll still have hospitals, then they'll still have schools. So I'm like, Yeah, it is violating and everything, the child molesting priests, but they do fucking survive that. So, and they don't blow up a bunch of shit, and it's like, damn, maybe that's the role that they're just playing because they do this show shit though. So maybe that's just the role that they're playing. Maybe a lot in the Vatican do eat children too. And it's just for appearance sake, right? So, anyway, it's just like you guys just focus on very survivable things, and it seems like that by design by the child eaters is all. Like, you guys, a million children missing per year. CPS funnels children into child sex, and you guys think you're making progress. You should be doing something else. Like, your punches aren't landing. Sometimes, in fights and everything, especially in martial arts, you got to do, like lean into it to, get some leverage or, to actually start landing punches. And that's my leaning into it. I'm like, look, all this weird consenting stuff that you guys do amongst your eyes wide shut shit, whatever, you know. Not selling your child like at the end of the movie, but that rainbow room scene, people are like, oh my god, and that was their little training and everything. But it's like, yeah, they eat children and sacrifice them. Could we go, oh my god, for that? Could we go, let's kill the child killers? That's an easy one. That's an easy one, right? Unless you're trying to sustain the blackmail, for those that are blackmailed. And I'm trying to free up the blackmailed, the ones that didn't eat children. I'm sure there's plenty of those. So yeah, and congratulations to Justin Bieber and everything for. See, it's not all of them. There's a lot of naive people that go into Pedo Wood, otherwise known as Hollywood, and they get used and everything. And no, he should not have been like pimped out to Barack Obama, or whoever else. But if he willingly decided to do some sexual act, that's on him. Whether people taught him or not, or groomed him or not, it's very, very greedy when it gets, the age range is too far away. It gets greedy. And that's what you guys suffer from on this planet is extreme greed. So that's how I mentally process those things. And Michael Jackson, and there's some out there, but they like to make it seem like it's everyone, because then they're like, you might as well join us because everyone thinks you're a piece of shit, is one of their tactics that they do. So yeah. And then maybe in the future we could just understand that, Hollywood is just pedowood, and you should steer clear from that if you don't want to participate in that stuff, or you should go join it if you do want to participate in that. And then they wouldn't have, young, naive people like Justin Bieber, which I don't like any of his music, but I like what he's speaking up for now, and that's cool. And then you wouldn't have young, naive, Justin Bieber's going in there being pimped out to Obama or whoever, supposedly. So, yeah. So, and then you guys could be self-aware of it and be like, not doing those things. I understand the evil likes to grab the innocent and everything, and it's like about violating their innocence and whatnot. But these things are never really that clean, and things get messy and whatnot. And I get a little sick of like children feeling themselves up around. Although, like, I've been kind of complaining about it a little bit before I left Colorado Springs and moved over to Denver here, and they haven't gotten their children to do that. Although their children have done other sexually inappropriate things like mowing around me and whatnot. So there's that. And I'm not going to let it affect me. I know what I am. I don't care. People will be like, you're taking the pedo side and everything. I'm like, look, I'm taking everybody's side, and this is the cleanest that I can make it, and I'm going to focus on the child murderers. Okay? Because, you know, if my sexual abuse led to me getting murdered, or my adrenochrome abuse led to me getting murdered, I wouldn't be here to talk about these things. So I can't say that I've had it worse than those. And a lot of people were trying because they weaponize the sexual abuse. They're like, here, tell us all about your sexual abuse, and it will be one of the sexual abusers. That they get off on that, and they're like, no, talk about it for the rest of your life, okay? And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about it the rest of my life. And but they get people to do that, and just like Virginia Giuffre. I think her big mistake, a lot of people's big mistake, is that I was abused, I was abused, I was abused. And there's worse stuff. There's worse stuff. There's worse stuff, guys. I'm going to talk about it for like 10 seconds. All right. There's worse stuff, and then I'm going to go back to me, 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 me. I survived. How dare? Yeah. There's all those other ones that didn't survive, but I survived. And it's like, yeah, maybe you should be a voice for the ones that didn't survive, right? How about the child hunting parties and everything, where they like hunt children with weapons and shit. And just the stuff that leads to child murder. Nobody could say, it just looks a lot like on Twitter and everything, out of all the child protectors, so-called child protectors, and the pedo hunters, so-called pedo hunters, that have a bunch of pedos in them, they can't ever simply say, let's kill the child killers. I find that strange. Have a good day. I, of course, wanted to add on to my video, because why not add on 5,000 fucking times, because that's just something that I do, and I don't edit the shit, and I just say, fuck it, whatever. Yeah, my cat's playing inside this bag, and I was just playing with her. You know how cats like the paper bags and shit? And there she goes. Alright, my little joys. Alright, here, I'll come and get her, because... this is my little joy. This is my little joy. Say hi, everyone. She's like, I don't care about that shit. Yeah. So, there was multiple things that happened in my life, so things aren't always so black and white and yada yada. So, I've said some pretty extreme things earlier in this video, the like 5 clips ago or something. My sister was 5 years older than me, so she was always hanging around 17, 18, 19-year-olds when I'm 12 years old. And I probably would have totally fucked them, if given the chance. And I don't think that's the same as, people are like, gotta hunt them pedos, because that shit gets lumped in there. The kids, the almost adults and young adults and everything kind of playing around. That's in another category, as I just saw someone on, who was it? I am QHEF, I think. Some 44-year-old trying to kidnap a 5-year-old. That's some, fucked up shit. And there was some little boy that saved them and everything, or her, and that was great. And to say that they're the same, a lot of people tell me they have sexual experiences with young adults when they're 12, 13, 14. And I can't put that in the same category as some 40 or 50-year-olds or older trying to kidnap a fucking 5-year-old or 6-year-old or something, right? Those are just different things. I think people molesting me with their children is way fucked up. Into my adulthood, probably taking photos, right? Because you got to Michael Jackson me, you got to make up the the evidence somehow, and I get it. I think my family, did some other weird shenanigans with, girls my age or around my age. That was sexual and traumatic, but I don't think that that's bad. I think people tried getting me to say that it's all bad and I need to categorize. Look, raping me with your children into my adulthood is pretty fucked up. People trying to hook me up with, girls and women my age, and do something sexual, whether it's traumatic for me or not, because I'm kind of asexual, so I have a hard, I touch myself with ease. me playing with others is a little harder, and this has been very evident ever since I was a child. I get stalked by the cult, so some know, some don't. I do kind of fuck around with both sides, but I'm not into eating children and other people and all that weird fucked up shit, or sacrificing children or anything like that. I guess they got me interested in sex parties and everything. It got me a lot of considerations and everything. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I can fuck a college girl. Doesn't seem right to like date it because we're at like two different generations and everything. But like, are we at like some sex party where we're just trying things out? Like, like it's a buffet, but we're not eating people. So might I add, it's just like, fucking around, and that's totally different. And that has been something I've been trying to give back to the community since sex things seem more important for everyone else than it is for me. I would really just like that connection. I've been put out of sync and people trying to take advantage of that, and they distort me a little bit by, like jerking dogs off in front of me when I'm a child and having the FBI and CIA show me their child porn collection and picture books back in the 80s when I'm a child. And doing fucked up things. And that was what that was, but I'm sure they didn't write a report or anything, so I can't prove it. But since I've taken actually no deals, I'm going to freely speak about it because I am part of disclosure too. And this weird fucked up stuff that they do. So, I distinguish, especially the endophilia. People are like, oh my God, it's all the same. No, it's not. Stop getting super hysterical. You almost sound like one of the pedo whisperers that hides amongst the child protectors and shit. So yeah, I think that's what I'm even going to title this video is the pedo whisperers, and that is a thing. And you need to be vigilant for that. And, these things where people are pretty close to age and they're having fun with each other and they're in, their own social thing and everybody's agreeing to it and nobody's getting roofie raped. I can't really, that seems like a waste of time focusing on that stuff, but they love to teach the shame and, they need to have their blackmail and everything. If everyone was like, well, fuck it, let's just like focus on the child murderers, a lot of their blackmail will go away. I think, the pedophilia, endophilia stuff is much larger than people realize. So I just can't go around hating half of America. I'm like, okay, well, I guess the Zeke came in here, the Zios, and they fucking, turned half of America into like fucking pedos over the centuries, as they do this generationally. And that's why nothing's really done about the Catholic Church molesting others, because they just mass scale do it, and they make a lot of patsies for the child protectors to go after, so you're not focused at the top. You're just kind of focused fighting amongst yourselves and everything. Like the creepy uncle thing, right? And so that creepy uncle was probably roofie molested multiple times. They don't even realize it. And maybe even possessed and bad magic on them. And then the ones doing this stuff, the underage stuff, they're all fucking getting their children to fucking, feel themselves up around them, and then act like the victim afterwards, and it takes like a problem like, that's like this big and it, expands it, exponentially. But I think, there's just so many, and I just can't. I'm like, look, like I guess if everything is consensual, then let's just focus on the non-consenting stuff, which is, I guess, a vast majority of it. And so you guys have me on board with that. I just can't shit pick every fucking situation. Some people are going to like, oh my God, there was a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old. That 19-year-old should be in jail and should have sex charges and shit. And I just can't, bring myself to that. I don't know anything about any of those two. I don't know their social situation. And it seemed like if everyone agreed to it, then, we should probably find better things to do and to focus on. Like building tunnels and trying to, raid some of these places, which is your right. You should be able to do these things. You might come across some weird aliens or human beings. But I think it's, within your power to, but no one's digging tunnels in America, because y'all just, hyper fixated and stunned to death by all these direct energy weapons and cell towers that they have everywhere, and overworked. And I just can't say, the most violating thing for me, was getting circumcised. My parents did that to me. Not that my parents are bad or anything, but they, the Rothschild education and all that shit, steer societies, these elites at the top, they steer society a certain way, and they're like, mainly the Zeke, the Zios. And they're like, of course you should chop the tip of your newborn's penis off. You should do that, and I could heal from a lot, but I can't heal from that, can I? Because people dismembered me. So that's what I'm most upset at, and I'm a little upset, or a lot, about people being such pussies about sexual shit that it had to take me into my 40s to learn that I was even fucking abused in the fucking first place. That I never had a good fucking orgasm. It was always a bad feeling, guilty orgasm, because people abused me and I never fucking resolved that shit. And everyone's being fucking pussies, and nobody's just saying shit like I say shit. No one's just like being upfront. It's just always these stupid games. Get your children to bend over around me. Yeah, I get it. I see what you guys put Michael Jackson through, because I've been Michael Jackson, although I don't have millions of dollars, and I never, made a contract with others saying that I'll make them money. All right, so I have dodged a lot of bullets, actually, and I never agreed to be a jester for the show. All right, so I'm just here kind of refereeing. I step out of my bounds from time to time because human ego things, but I am just kind of refereeing, for the sides here. And I guess I'm aiding both sides by disclosure too, because these are things that they need disclosed, so they could go do their karmatic retribution stuff, but also the other side deserves to know as well. And I'm just not gonna. Yeah. When I was in junior high, I would have fucked a college girl, and people probably would have taught me that was like, some people would have probably taught me that was some abuse, and maybe I would have fallen for it. And I think that's a little extreme, given everything that's occurring. All right, so I think the child eaters is a much smaller portion, but the pedos underneath them that they're procuring these children from, they can't do anything because everybody's like, let's murder the pedos. Look, if you want an eye for an eye with that shit, go feel them up without their consent. Okay? A lot of that shit be solved like that. Nobody's talking about the child killers killing the child killers. Like maybe that's fair and justice. But look, I had some bad fucked up things happen to me, and I appreciate returning all that shit back to the sender. But also, they never took my life. They sucked blood from me. They did the adrenochrome from me. Scared the shit out of me. Sucked my blood. I have a hard time giving blood because of the result of it. That. Just like I have a hard time with sex because I think people violated me, and I don't think it was entirely my family. It could have very well been. I just don't have that information. There was this one instance. My sister, we went to the end of the block. There was this red house, or it had some red color, red and white color, I think. Uneven steps at the time, and something happened there, and I can't quite remember, but I think it was sexual. But also, I'm just weird with sexual stuff. I'm even into my adulthood. And that's, I think, a divine protection, actually, and I need to not sweat it, but also, like, that was way different than Roofie molesting me with children, some of these families, all right, that Roofie diddled me, would force people force babysitting on me, and then have their child feel themselves up around me. And on top of that, repeatedly saying, "Don't touch my special spots." Don't touch my special spots. On top of all the other perverse shit that people did to me as a child into my teenage years. So, I can't, my family trying to hook me up with girls my age, much different than the other shit. And I can't say that it's all fucking abuse. And my friend marrying at 15 or 16 to someone like twice her age, I can't, I don't have any more information. If I later learned that it was forced and she was unhappy and miserable and it was so terrible and horrific, then I would change my mind. But I don't have that information. People are making it up, when they argue with me online. And yeah, so that was her decision and her family's business. And when you start, doing that more often, you'd be able to, make your way through this fucking swamp, right? And that's what I do mentally, because I see it as more peace. I see it as actual freedoms, just like things are so fucked up that it would just, like leave it up to the families and you guys will have less problems and go from there, right? And that's how I'm approaching it. Because they got you all, distracted and everything. It's okay to care about others, but I don't really see you guys doing anything about Jesus's people being fucking bombed either. Just a bunch of Christians standing around fucking like, look, we got to be nice and respectful and everything, even when someone's shooting us in the face, or well, we just saw them get shot in the face, so we're just going to sit here and wait. Sounds fucking stupid to me. No wonder they fucking killed 60 million Christians in in the Soviet Union or something with the Bolshevik regime or the one after him. I don't know all the details, but yeah, that really doesn't get taught in history either. That it's always that made up 6 million with the Holocaust, the ones perpetrating all these evils. The ones that are like the Nazis, but the Nazis are nothing. The real Nazis are nothing like they are. But you get, with the false distortion and the false history, then you get people, being some evil Nazis and shit. And it's like a magic spell, and they lie enough and everything. You even see this BB turd, say that, you repeat it enough, people will believe it. And it's like, well, I guess, that's how your, manipulative, shitty magic works, and in a way it does work like that. But also being self-aware of it and not letting it get to you. Yeah, just, I'm not going to let shit get to me. I'm self-aware of these, weird things and the Catholics shoving things in my roofied ass and everything. And then they're like trying to do this gay thing on me. So they like do a possession, make love not work. So when love gets sent my way and it's a lovely female that I want to make it work with and it's amazing, but then something like within me like pushes them away or gets me to say something or do something stupid or all the above. And that's what that possession was about. And then they're like, well, maybe he's gay. We shoved a bunch of things in his ass. He must, like it, so, And then they send me a bunch of disgusting ones. It's like, no thanks. I haven't, I've been with like, 2, 3, maybe 4 guys, not really on any regular basis. It was always nerve-wracking when I was doing it. And there, I guess you distorted me a little bit and you got me out of sync and you got me to try something. And I'm like, no, not really. So yeah, I would prefer a vagina and not, the trans vagina. I take back kind of like wanting to suck their dicks. A lot of them are just really annoying. A lot of them are staring at their fucking screens because they're total mind controls. Because it takes a great amount of mind control to get someone to be like, you're trans, and and that's just that right there is always looking in your phone. That's a big one. It's not 100%, but it's usually a lot of them because they are very mind controlled. Just like the whole gay movement and everything, they're very mind controlled. And it's none of these people's fault. Okay, I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm just saying they're out of sync and distorted too. And they're, getting hit with EMFs that make them want a penis suck a penis and a vagina lick a vagina, and they're drinking all these chemicals that makes a penis want to suck a penis and a vagina lick a vagina. And, I can't really, be mad at them either. But I am going to start distancing myself. I don't, really need to fulfill any fantasies I get from people raping me into my adulthood. Which still kind of like randomly happens. It's this, nonsense targeted individual shit. And it's something that my grandma even said, was like, I'm tired of getting raped. And I'm like, why? And I like was totally gaslighting, had that mindset, and I like totally dismissed it. I'm like, what a crazy thing for a crazy grandma to say. But she was, right. That all this weird culty stuff happens, and yeah, it's not like every week or every month, but it's like a couple times a year, right? And it's just weird. Just like a lot of the, scientists and everything that go missing, or I mean, a lot of them are alive too, but the targeted individual thing, that someone came into my house and moved things around and they didn't steal anything, but it was like, yeah, they could just come into your house and everything, right? And it's like they're working with landlords or locksmiths. And they definitely work with the police and everything, for righteous and unrighteous reasons. But it's really just a perversion of the whole Jesus love your neighbor thing. Where nowadays it's like spy on your neighbor, and that's why everyone's ordering DoorDash, because of the spy stuff. And you'll be surprised at the spy stuff that it's everywhere too. And it, like every town, every school, every street, or almost every street. And people are ordering DoorDash. That's where your trillions and trillions and dozens of trillions of dollars are going, to these intel communities and pals, right? And the bankers and such, and they're just fucking moving money around to sustain their fake economies, like the DoorDash stuff, for their fucking willing spies and everything, and it can be used for good reasons and it can be used for bad reasons. And often I feel it's used for bad reasons, and they do that to suppress souls like mine and everything. And that's why, like, I'm not really too into, and I guess I gotta do this sometimes to make sure I'm not wearing a mask. I'll pull on my face. I'll pull on my face. I don't care. Look. Right? Yeah. All right, that was just a little test. I should probably do it more often, actually. But yeah, when you make a movement about somebody, they have ways of like cloning them or getting lookalikes and people that sound like one, and then it's like, man, well, you gotta really decentralize at that point, and you guys gotta go with the flow when you guys when you guys start get going on this revolution. Yeah, I don't want no civil war and over this pedo stuff. You know what? I survived it. All right, so I give them that. So why don't you work with them, which the gods will test you to go after the child killers. Because I'm sure a good chunk of them are just doing some weird sexual shit that everyone could disagree with, right? Even myself, I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I think when you get like older and everything, and people could expand their horizons, especially in social circles, and you should just leave it at that. You shouldn't be forcing others. But it seems very oddly consensual with a lot of them. There's like Ivanka and everything, and she was totally, not all children are angels. Some are demons. Black-eyed children. Don't forget that shit. All right, and some are demons. And, maybe if you gave them a few places to do this, it wouldn't just be all over the place, and shitty. And I know it's kind of like a fucking neutral stance, because that's what I am. Not being servile or anything. It's just kind of like a neutral stance. I'm like, okay, well, try not eating and murdering the children then. And make sure that it's okay. If you want to teach your kids, to do weird sexual things, which it seems like a lot of the Zeke Zios do, all right, then go do that. Just go do that in Florida. Let's give them Florida. Let's give them Florida. Get the fuck out of Palestine. We can manage them in Florida. We're going to have a polar opposite nice version like the IDF that goes in there and make sure they're not fucking making missiles and nuclear bombs and other bioweapon shit. And just like keep, but they're still going to act like the biggest victims. If you give them like the nicest coastlines, you give them supplies and food, you give them everything, pools, prostitution, brothels, and everything, and they can raise their kids to be little sluts and everything, you give them everything, they're still going to be the victim. And you got to remember that, okay? Because that's what they do, all right? So, and it often comes through the JUICS or CE. Sorry, JUICE. I'm not like females be like spelling shit out like all crazy and everything fast. Yeah, it'll be like that, and that's probably beneficial that I fucked up too. So I'm leaving it all in there. Fuck editing. Go fuck yourself. So yeah, and that's like the best. It's like yeah, well, why don't you guys go do it over there? I'm sure they have lovely, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds that you could fucking, meet, for the pedophiles, and then it's like, yeah, we go over here and we have Disney because we already have Disney, and it's like, right? Isn't it just easier, just more honest? Fuck, we lose a state. Who gives a fuck about Florida? It's already pedo land. For those not aware of that, welcome, to welcome to the rest of class, and just if you don't want to be a part of it, move out, and then there, and maybe give them a couple places around the globe to do their little fucked up shit, and make sure they're not fucking make sure they're not throwing bombs and bioweapons at you and other advanced weapons and shit like that, right? And then things would be a little more peaceful, right? But to try to, destroy it all, then you have to become a monster to take care of it, and that becomes a problem too. And I'm not saying people can't get violent to self-defend themselves. Of course you can. But, it gets to a point where, it's like, well, maybe we should just give them like, a spot on the Rothschilds Island, right? Over in Antarctica. Give them a spot there. It'll be like going home to them, trust me on that one. All right. So, you could give them that. We give them like, Florida, give them a couple other spots or something, and then, I mean, they'll still act like the biggest victims. Like, even if you supply them with nice housing and electricity and food and everything, and they could all raise their kids to be little demonic sluts that enjoy sex at like 8 years old or whatever the fuck, and a lot of people won't partake in that. But, the Hollywood would still do that, and Disney would still do that, and the FBI and CIA would still do that. Even though they have lower level nice employees that are like, no, I'm here to do good and to catch the criminal. No, the people at the top is collecting all the stuff and then showing it to y'all, your children and everything, to try to turn them into whatever they're trying to turn them into by molesting them with children into their adulthood, and possessing them and shit, right? They usually get 100% success rate, but it's not quite 100%. Is it? So yeah, and then we can move on to fucking other issues, like burning villages down and people's homes down and this world dominance bullshit and faking this and faking that and everything's fucking fake, and maybe we could focus on some of that stuff because it seems like there's a lot of pedo whisperers amongst the pedo hunters. All right, and I'm just saying. And it's nice to know that I've been Michael Jackson, and it's for life because I'm not one of them. I got through that ESP shit, like I'll get away with it and everything. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in it to get. What are you talking about? So they're giving me the not get away with it treatment, right? And I just need to accept that and not let it bother me. And there's going to be people that totally get and understand everything I'm saying, even though they might not agree. They'll still be respectful and shit, and they're like, yeah, I guess, I guess we're going to move on, and there's going to be people trying to make up issues around me, just like happened a few weeks ago with someone that was a leader of a church. Anyway, so I definitely am not into attending church because I think religion is a perversion of all the spiritual stuff. I went from atheist to being spiritual. I didn't go from atheist to like, abusive religion is what it often is. But I do appreciate the group for, if I mean, ain't no place evil free. There's always going to be like one or more people that are doing evil shit. And look, that I like myself a nice Satanist female, that isn't out to harm me and everything. And I like myself a nice Christian. And I've been saying that for a long time. And it's out because I'm Mercury, because I bounce between the sides and everything. And I'm kind of like a referee, also adjudicator. And yeah, so I kind of fuck around with all the sides. But okay on being hijacked and possessed and all that. No thanks. And thanks. Your college girls, I could totally do at a sex party, but I've been rethinking the sex party thing because I'm like, I don't even really need that. I just need that one and be put back in sync and everything. And that one, around my age, would be nice. I know it's a little harder because they do such a good job getting people to fucking run off and get married. It's really hard to find someone in your 40s now. But whatever. I'm not going to let it get me down that much. I've been doing pretty fine on my own, although I've been kind of stuck too because um, I haven't had that divine feminine. But whenever that divine feminine comes around, I do get motivated and driven. And then when she's not, then I'm not. And I yeah, went from my 20s to my 40s pretty quickly. But that's all right. I'm still not going to let it get me down. I've come here for a purpose, and I channeled enough for others. Fulfilled a deal between God and Satan. Is to test humanity by deceiving humanity. So in a way, Satan is working for God, and therefore everyone's just kind of doing what they're fucking supposed to be doing, right? So I mean, there's some that are doing like they're like some deceivers out there, and they like look at like someone like Hillary Hinton, and they're like, no, no, I wouldn't. I'm into like deceiving and everything, but I wouldn't cut the face off a child and wear it myself like Leatherface or anything. And it's like, right? I know. I think that's a good chunk of the demons too. I think there's a good chunk of demons that don't need to eat children, but they get off on like menacing and pranking and getting these low vibration things out of you. So it's a spectrum, and there. So I mean, there's a lot of annoying. Well, I mean, they could be, yeah. I guess you could just call them demons too on the Christian side. I really feel that Kenneth Copeland is one of them, as well as many TV preachers that especially need money so they can have a private jet. I'm like, I need money so I can help like people with their bills or something, and maybe buy an apartment building and invite people into it, right? Like if I had the ability to make a 10 or $20 million massive apartment complex, I would do that. And that's why I kind of try to do my money manifestation. It's not so I could just buy an island in Costa Rica or some plot of land out there. Although I would like to, travel outside the United States so I could live the American dream, right? Things are a little fucked up here, and I think I can help still with setting things right in America. I was on the wrong track for a long time doing the president thing. I don't want to be part of that club. I'm not into child eating, so I'm just going to have to do something else, and that's just that. And leader of a revolution, but I got the CIA, FBI up my ass too. Plus, they could just like clone and replace me. I already have lookalikes of me out there. I saw them in my 20s, looked exactly like me. And I should have probably interacted with them. It's interesting. I probably would have got their name or something, or a fake name, But anyway, or they could just get a mask, at this point, and there's many voice actors out there that I'm sure could sound like me, right? And then they have their AI as well. So there's all sorts of things people could do to just like, if you make it about me, then they're going to replace me, because then you're going to encourage them to replace me and get someone that talks their fucking tune, to steer the mob, so you say, so to speak. So I'm not interested in that. So I could do, I could be like the owl in Link's Awakening, right? And I could be a guide, and I think that's best. And I could be a guide, and I know many of the occult uh, do hear me, of the light and dark side. So maybe I should just be the guide instead of some big renowned like leader and everything. That's something that Thomas Massey and the others haven't really considered. I don't think is being replaced and everything, against your will, all violating and everything. Like people roofie rate me a few times a year, a couple times, even just once is bad. But like 1 to 3 times a year, all right, for most of the years of your life, it's a little fucked up. But there's more fucked up stuff happening, and I could get past all that, and fine. I guess people make fun of me. You just like all the Catholics and everything, and they're like, oh my god, if you like anal, you're gay. And they're trying to do that side op thing because they're shoving things in my ass when I'm a child, but they're also like, yeah, also when I'm a child, they're like, look, if you like anal stuff, then you're gay, and if you're gay, you're bad. And it's like, oh my god, and yeah, that was just some of the stuff. They tried to make me a mass shooter. I'm sure James Holmes like went through stuff I went through, and Tyler Robertson, and all these others that just get targeted, and they're getting controlled and manipulated, and they don't know it, and they start the family division, and that's Tyler's family like flipped on him, right? Because Tyler's been getting targeted ever since he was a child, and now he's an erring, almost adult or an adult. I forget his age, but and then they're like, well, look at that. We targeted him for decades, but we're not going to tell you. We're just going to say, look at his behavior. Isn't he a piece of shit, mom and dad, and his other siblings? And then that's how they get this separation and everything. So maybe you spread some awareness, that they do these things on a mass scale. They use all the schools and everything. It's like, and then when you start letting families be families, then that includes school, like forced schooling. And you could see why evil wouldn't want this. So you'd see why evil would, the pedophiles, and child eaters would wear the mask of child protector and be like, oh my God, could you believe the stuff that Christopher is saying? Holy shit. And he doesn't want your kids forced, they're brainwashing in school, although we're not going to use those words. We're just like, he doesn't care. And it's like, no, I think they'd just be safer at home, and but they don't want them safe. They want them out there controlled. They want you controlled. They want to control your kids. They want to sacrifice your kids because, there's a lot of people that are like, only 18 and up and everything. Like, oh my God, that 14-year-old with that 18-year-old, and that 18-year-old should be in jail. And I'm just, shut the fuck up. And that's much different than Jerry Seinfeld going out there procuring, some, 16, 17, 18-year-old. All right. And that gets greedy, is what it is. It's greed. And that's what you guys suffer from. You suffer from this extreme greed across the board. And that's what I see it as. So some people may agree with it, some people may not. And, that's on you. I've made peace with it. I feel more at peace with it because I'm not fighting, with, a majority of America and some of the lighter stuff that was in Eyed Wide Shut. And I'm not fighting with all that stuff because I'm like, yeah, well, if you leave it up to the family, it seems like a lot of protection, like you could, yeah, and that should extend to building your house out of natural materials. They don't allow you to build with dirt. But you should build with dirt. You can build walls with dirt, and it doesn't burn down. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't burn down, and it's cheap. And it's like right there, and they're like, no, you can't build with this. Fuck that shit. These are some of the laws that gotta go when the great purge and revolution comes. And that you guys should be fucking revolutionary war over eating children. You should not be. They've been setting it up for centuries, all right? They've been setting it up for centuries for you guys to civil war over the pedo stuff. And guess what? The child users at the top, nothing's going to happen to them. So as your guide, I would say, kind of like, focus, on the big fish at the top, and all this petty stuff, especially, look, you already have stalking laws, and it's already wrong to rape, no matter the age. It's already wrong to rape. So you guys just kind of keep it simple, focus a little more, and yet have a little nuance from situation to situation, all right? Because I don't want you guys fighting. Oh my God, there was that expensive taste motherfucker that was like, oh my God, the children had sex with the children when they were in a really stressed out situation, and the adults were all gaslighting them for months or years on end, and they all had sex with each other. Could you believe? Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, expensive taste. Oh my God, that is like, really? And you got to recognize that there's a lot of demons out there that are albastars. And they use the sexual shame as their fucking weapon. They don't care about protecting children. They care about using the name of protecting children to attack others and to create misery. All right? And, you got to be aware of these things. All right? That's all. So good luck out there. Glory to the revolution. And fuck your Civil War shit. I would work with some pedophiles to kill, some child killers. Yes, I would do that. Could we get some more people, maybe thinking like this? And I just can't, unless the pedophile killed a child, then I'm not, for murder. I'm not even for murdering for the murderers, because, some of the ones at the top are just going to give you one of their lookalikes, to go murder, and then they're going to get off scot-free. And then it's like, well, why don't we just lock them up? Well, what if we get it wrong? What if it's their lookalike? So why don't we lock them up and give them Fago grape soda and the actual pizza from the cheapest fucking source we could get, and some of the shittiest fucking jerky there is, and give it to them because that's their favorite foods, right? So yeah, I think that's fair, yeah, just be careful out there. Try not to get too manipulated. I see the Michael Jacksoning thing. It's been one hell of a psychological warfare, because I didn't really notice it until like a few years ago. So